Can't decide if you want a Rook or a Daith? Pros and cons by a piercer, episode number 50. We're going to go through some of the pros and cons of each. Coming up right now. For those who are new to the channel, my name is DaVo. I'm a professional body piercer, have been since 1994. I own and operate the Axiom Body Piercing Studio located here in Des Moines, Iowa, inside Skin Kitchen Tattoo. So when I talk to you, I'm talking to you as somebody who has done this piercing, both of these, numerous times, and helped people through the healing process and making the decision of one piercing or another a number of times. This particular video topic was suggested by one of our viewers. They made a comment of, hey, could you do a video of this versus this? And I'm pretty sure they said Daith and Rook, but I could be wrong. If I'm wrong and you're watching, leave a comment so I can do a video on what you wanted. Also, if you find this interesting or helpful, please let me know, especially if you're on the fence between one or two different piercings. I'll be happy to do some in the future with the same kind of format. What we're going to do is I'm going to do 5 different kind of points or subjects. We're going to go through each one of them, and hopefully by the end of it, it'll at least give you enough information to have an educated discussion with your piercer when you go in and get the piercing done. And those are, number 1, anatomy. Number 2, the piercing procedure itself. 3, healing. 4, jewelry selection or options. 5, we're going to finish out with something we don't always talk about, which is living with the piercing. So anatomy. Really, this is something you definitely need to see your piercer about and talk about. With both of these piercings, you do need to, first off, have a pronounced enough ridge that it is safe to pierce it, and there is enough tissue there to anchor it without worrying about it rejecting or growing out of the body. With the Rook, it's a little less complicated than it is with the Daith, because with the Daith, you add in the fact that it's kind of in a tight spot. So there needs to be enough room in there for them to do the procedure safely without hitting anything else. And there also needs to be enough room there to allow the jewelry to sit comfortably. Without seeing your piercer and having them take a look at it, it's really hard to say. Here's the deal with that. When you go in and you get a piercing, and I know you're excited about getting it done, you definitely want it, and et cetera, and you think it's the coolest thing since popcorn or peanuts. When a piercer says, no, I don't feel comfortable doing that, or I wouldn't advise to doing that, based on your anatomy, they're doing you a favor. Basically, what they're saying is you're not a good candidate. Meaning that that piercing, yeah, they could probably do it, but it may reject. You may have issues with it if they do it. The other thing maybe is they maybe don't feel comfortable doing the piercing with you, on you. For one reason or another, they look at that anatomy and go, I don't want to deal with that. Now, that's why whenever in doubt, you think somebody's kind of pulling your leg or they just giving you the bum steer or just plain don't want to do the piercing, it's not a bad idea to go see a second piercer that's well experienced and have them take a look at it and get their opinion. A lot of times, though, they'll probably pretty much say the same thing. Occasionally not, though. So that moves us on to the piercing procedure itself. This piercing is usually done freehand, meaning no forceps or clamps are used during the procedure. Usually varies from person to person, piercer to piercer. Some people will use hook needles, which are needles that are shaped like a hook, or they'll use curved needles, basically to make it a little easier to get in and out of there. Personally, I don't particularly care for either of them. For me personally, it just doesn't feel like I'm getting the right angle when I use those types of needles. Either way, they're probably going to use one of these, which is a needle receiving tube. And you know, every time we pull one of these out, or I pull one of these out and set it on the tray, the piercer's eye, or the piercee, the person getting pierced, their eyes turn into, I guess, pie plates, freaking out because they think this is the needle. No, this is not the needle. What this is a hollow tube, It's got a slanted edge on one side to make it easy to fit into areas. And what we use this for is to support the tissue and also to guide the needle out of the area without hitting anything else. Basically, they were originally designed for Prince Albert piercings. If you know what a Prince Albert piercing is, maybe you can use your imagination and understand where this goes and why it was important and a huge development when it came to piercing. Since then, it's been expanded to a lot of different usage. Nostrils, septums, various other piercings are done using these. So, the only main difference between the two with the Rook is pretty much just a straight shot, guide that needle all the way, put the jewelry in, close it. With the Daith, it can be a little bit more complicated. Sometimes they're best done from the top downward. Sometimes they're best done from the bottom upward. It all depends on the structure and the pronunciation of that area where your Rook is, where a Rook piercing would be. Sometimes the tissue needs to be flattened out to allow for that needle to get into position correctly or to get the jewelry out of there. So if both of these, because of the angle that the needle's sitting at in some cases and the pressure that the needle receiving tube puts on it, the piercing may not be that bad, but sometimes that bending and flexing can be a little uncomfortable. As far as jewelry insertion, if it's done with a ring, it can be very quick, especially if they're using a beaded or seamless ring with Daith piercings. With Rooks, just as quickly. With threaded jewelry, barbells, whether it's push pin or it's threaded or threadless, it's going to take additional time to get that jewelry in there and get that end on there correctly. So always keep that in mind. And while they're doing that, they have to put pressure on that barbell, and there's a lot more maneuvering. So sometimes, especially with Daith piercings, I think the ring looks better and heals faster and is easier to deal with. Which brings us to the next thing, healing. Both of these heal out in about the same time. They're both about equal as far as healing time. The only main difference between the two is with Daith piercings, because they're more inside the ear and not sticking out of the ear on the bleeding edge of the ear, they don't seem to get as much contact and abuse. Less contact, less abuse means less movement, means faster healing period. Rooks, because of where they're at, they tend to get bumped a lot. Not maybe as much as an outer or upper ear cartilage piercing would be, or a helix piercing, but they're in one of those spots that you really don't understand or really know how much contact you have with things until you get it pierced. The Daith, more inside the ear, it's more protected. It's not going to have as many issues as far as contact. The drawback between the two, if you work in the medical industry, if you work in live entertainment, if you work in something where you have to wear earbuds, it is not going to be a good choice to get a Daith piercing. Mainly because the bottom hole is always going to be pretty much right at that entrance of the ear canal. So if you're a nurse and you need to use a stethoscope, it may not be the best piercing for you. And we'll get more into that with living with the piercing later. But I should bring it up during healing because you definitely don't want to have anything against the piercing during that healing period. That is going to cause issues. Now, with the Rook, it comes in contact with more stuff, so you have to be even more diligent. You might be able to wear earbuds, but you also want to avoid headphones, earmuffs, hats, scarves, etc. that may come in contact with the piercing. Jewelry choices, kind of covered this a little bit more. Both of them are pretty much the same. You have rings or you have curved barbells. Now, both of those have different designs, colors, materials, ends, etc. that you can experiment and see what works best for you. But that's pretty much circular or curved. That's what you're stuck with. Living with the piercing. Here's the deal. What I always kind of ask, and I bring this up occasionally when people are kind of on the fence between like a Daith and any other piercing, is Do you wear earbuds or do you wear headphones? Because let's face it, there's only two types of people in the world, those who wear earbuds and those who wear headphones. If you wear earbuds, even after the piercing is healed, a Daith piercing is going to be in contact with it, and it can cause issues with the piercing even after the healing period, just basically from the pressure that's on it. With the Rook, if you're wearing headphones, it's going to be uncomfortable because it kind of always seems to come in contact with that inner screen, and they can kind of protrude a little bit past the ear. Also, sleeping. Even after both of these piercings have healed, both of them are kind of notorious for being a little on the sensitive side, years in some cases afterwards. I would say the Rook is more prone to this just basically because where it's positioned, and when we put things flat against it, the fact that that area kind of flexes and moves. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult to sleep on. Unlike the Daith, which is more inside the ear, is probably not going to be as big of an issue. Now, also, the Rook is going to be more likely to get caught on things like clothing, headgear, etc., because it's further outside the ear, while the Daith is more inside the ear, so it's less likely to get caught on things. So there's what I would consider some of the things you want to think about even after the piercing is healed as far as your lifestyle. So hopefully this made you or got you on the road to making that decision on which you should get, either Rook or Daith. Personally, I love both of those piercings. I'm a little bit, I like the Daith a little bit better, just basically the way when it's done right, it fits well into the ear. The Rook can have that beautiful accent to the upper ear, and there's a lot of great jewelry out there that just is beautiful. So if you've made a decision one way or another, or gotten one, or would like to share your experience, please make a comment. Like I said also at the beginning, if you have some subjects you want to, or two piercings you want to see me go through this process with, leave a comment. Thank you for watching. Give us a thumbs up if you like the video. If you'd like to see more videos on body piercing and tattooing with a focus on education, please subscribe, hit that notification bell so that you're notified every single time we post something. Check out our merch store. We have various different items for sale, from t-shirts, tons and tons of different types of designs, in types of t-shirts, colors, etc. And we also have stickers, decals, I guess what they're called, coffee mugs, all kinds of stuff. So check that out. And here's hoping all your piercings heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I hope to see you for your piercing needs in the future. Thanks for watching. Have a good day, everybody. Go out there, do something you've never done before. Try something new.